For my son's wedding, I spent months planning my dress and the perfect gift. He called me 4 days before. "Mom, we moved the date," but I had my sources. I arrived at the church before the ceremony, parked right out front. When he saw my car, he went pale. I walked in, sat in the first row, and placed an envelope on the seat next to me. He couldn't say his vows properly. Let me tell you about the day I sat in the first pew of St. Michael's Chapel in Atlanta, Georgia, watching my only son stumble over his wedding vows while staring at me like I was a ghost he never expected to see. It was Sunday, July 21st, 2024, exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The summer heat made the air thick even inside that air-conditioned church. I was wearing a navy blue dress I'd spent 2 months searching for, with pearl earrings my late husband gave me on our 20th anniversary. My hands were shaking as I held a white envelope against my lap, my heart pounding so loud I was sure the guests behind me could hear it. Michael, my 30-year-old son, stood at that altar in his charcoal gray tuxedo, his face the color of printer paper. His fiancée, Chloe, 26 years old, looked absolutely stunning in her ivory gown, but even she kept glancing at me with confusion written all over her face. The priest, an older gentleman with kind eyes, asked Michael if he took Chloe to be his lawfully wedded wife. My son's voice cracked. The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour. "I do." The priest had to repeat the question. Twice. The secondhand embarrassment in that room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. You want to know why he looked like he'd seen a ghost? Because 4 days earlier, this boy I'd carried for 9 months, raised through scraped knees and broken hearts, called me on the phone and said, "Mom, we had to change the wedding date. It's going to be super last minute, just immediate family, you know? We'll do something bigger later." My stomach dropped to the floor when he said it. "What do you mean you changed it?" "Michael, I've had that date circled on my calendar for months. I bought my dress. I have your gift ready." "I know, Mom, I know. I'm really sorry. It's just, Chloe's grandmother isn't doing well, and we want to do this while she can still be there. It's going to be maybe 15 people, tops. We'll send you the new date once we figure it out." I sat there in my living room in Midtown Atlanta, phone pressed against my ear, feeling like someone had punched me in the chest. "Okay, honey, whatever you need. Just let me know." But here's the thing, folks. I had my sources. My neighbor's daughter works at the salon where Chloe gets her nails done. And let me tell you, that girl talks. 2 days after Michael's phone call, I got a text message that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Henderson, I overheard Chloe at the salon today. Wedding is still on for Sunday the 21st. She was laughing about how they told you it was postponed. Thought you should know." I read that message 7 times. My hands went numb. The room started spinning. I actually had to sit down on my kitchen floor because my legs just gave out. For 30 years, I'd given that boy everything, and he was lying to me, deliberately cutting me out of the most important day of his life. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling my heart break into smaller and smaller pieces. Part of me wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding. Maybe my neighbor's daughter heard wrong. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. But deep down, in that place where mothers always know the truth, I knew. I knew my son had chosen to exclude me from his wedding day. The next morning, I made a decision. I got up, showered, did my makeup, and started planning. If they wanted to play games, I could play too. But I wasn't going to make a scene. No, ma'am. I was going to show up with dignity, with grace, and with a message they'd never forget. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I got my hair done at that fancy salon on Peachtree Street, the one I usually avoided because it cost $85 just for a wash and style. I had my nails done in a subtle French manicure. I pressed my navy dress until there wasn't a single wrinkle, and I prepared that envelope. On Sunday morning, I woke up at 6, made myself scrambled eggs and toast, though I could barely eat. My stomach was in knots. I kept looking at myself in the mirror, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Part of me wanted to just stay home, to let them have their day, to pretend I didn't know I'd been deliberately excluded from my own son's wedding. But something in me had shifted. Some part of me that had spent 3 decades bending and accommodating and sacrificing had finally reached its breaking point. I arrived at St. Michael's Chapel at 2:30, half an hour before the ceremony. I parked my red Honda Civic right there in front, where everyone could see it. When Michael arrived with his groomsmen at 2:45, I watched through the church window as he got out of the car, laughing at something his best man said. Then he saw my car. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint right there on the sidewalk. He grabbed his best man's arm, said something I couldn't hear, and practically ran toward the church entrance. But I was already inside, sitting in that first pew on the groom's side, the seat traditionally reserved for the groom's mother, where I belonged. When he walked down that aisle and saw me sitting there, our eyes met. I've never seen that expression on my son's face before. It was fear, shame, panic, and guilt all mixed together. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but what could he say? What excuse could possibly justify what he'd done? So there I sat, through that entire ceremony, watching my son get married while he could barely focus on his bride. Every time the priest asked a question, Michael's eyes would dart to me, then back to Chloe, then back to me. His hands were shaking so badly that when it came time to put the ring on her finger, he almost dropped it. The wedding photographer kept trying to position people for photos, clearly confused about why the groom looked like he was about to have a panic attack. Chloe's family smiled and waved at me, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding. Her mother even gave me a warm hug before the ceremony started. "Susan, we're so happy you could make it," I smiled back. I wouldn't miss my son's wedding for the world. But what I didn't know yet, what I was still about to discover, would change everything I thought I understood about my relationship with my son. Because this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about years of manipulation I'd been too blind to see. Now, before I continue, I want you to do something for me. If you've ever felt excluded by someone you love, someone you sacrificed everything for, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you like stories about standing up for yourself and refusing to be disrespected, hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to hear how this ends. Trust me. Let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this didn't happen overnight. My name is Susan Harper. I'm 65 years old. I've been a widow for 10 years, and I spent 37 years working as an executive assistant at Crawford Engineering here in Atlanta. I live in a modest 2-bedroom condo in Midtown that I bought back in 1998, before the neighborhood got expensive. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, paid off, with a little balcony where I grow tomatoes and basil. Michael is my only child, my miracle baby, actually. I had 3 miscarriages before him, and the doctors told me I probably wouldn't be able to carry to term. But he came along when I was 35, healthy and perfect, and from that moment on, he became my entire world. His father, Richard, was a good man, a mechanical engineer, stable, dependable. We had a solid marriage, nothing passionate or dramatic, just comfortable. He worked long hours, I managed the home, and raised Michael, and we built a nice middle-class life together. Then, in March of 2014, Richard had a massive heart attack at his desk at work. He was 58 years old, gone, just like that. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. One Tuesday morning, he kissed me on the forehead and went to work, and by 3 that afternoon, I was a widow. Michael was 20 at the time, finishing his junior year studying business administration at Georgia State University. That's when I became everything to him, mother and father both. I picked up extra hours at work. I cashed in Richard's life insurance policy to make sure Michael could finish school without student loans. I sold Richard's car. I cut every expense I could. I worked overtime until my feet ached and my eyes burned. I told myself it was worth it. I was building my son's future, giving him opportunities I never had. After graduation, Michael landed a position at Henderson Global Solutions, a multinational consulting firm. Started at $75,000 a year, which seemed like a fortune to me. I was so proud I could have burst. My boy, wearing a suit to work, carrying a briefcase, making more money than his father and I ever dreamed of. That's when he met Chloe Richardson. She worked in the marketing department, had a degree from Emory University, came from what people call old money in Buckhead. Her father owns 3 car dealerships across Georgia. Her mother sits on charity boards and hosts fundraisers at their house that looks like something out of a magazine. At first, I was thrilled. My son dating a beautiful, educated girl from a good family. When he brought her to Sunday dinner the first time, back in 2019, she was charming, complimented my pot roast, asked about my work, laughed at my stories. I thought, this is it. This is the girl who'll give me grandchildren. But looking back now, I can see the signs I ignored, the little comments Chloe would make. "Oh, Susan, you still work? I thought Michael said you were thinking about retirement." Or, "This neighborhood is so authentic, very different from Buckhead. Always with a smile, always polite, but with something underneath that I couldn't quite name." Michael started changing too, subtly at first. He used to call me every Sunday evening, just to chat. That tapered off to every other week, then once a month. When I'd ask about his life, he'd give vague answers. "Work's fine, Mom. Everything's good." They moved in together in 2021 to a 2-bedroom apartment in Virginia Highland. Modern building, granite countertops, those floor-to-ceiling windows that let in too much heat in summer. The down payment was $28,000. Michael came to me, nervous, asking if I could help. I had $53,000 in savings, money I'd been setting aside for retirement, for emergencies, for the future. I gave him $30,000. "This is for your future," I told him. "Build something good." He hugged me so tight that day. "Thanks, Mom. I'll pay you back, I promise." He never did. Over the next 3 years, the distance grew. He'd cancel our Sunday dinners at the last minute. "Sorry, Mom, Chloe's family is having a thing." Or, "We've got plans with her friends." I'd sit there with the roast I'd made, eating alone, telling myself it was normal. He was building his life. That's what children do. I convinced myself everything was fine. I convinced myself that the knot in my stomach every time I called him was just me being an anxious mother. I convinced myself that it was normal for sons to drift away when they found the woman they wanted to marry. But it wasn't normal. And deep down, I knew it. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. The real unraveling started in January of 2024. Michael came to my condo on a Friday evening, which was unusual because he rarely visited anymore unless I specifically invited him for dinner. He looked nervous, kept running his hands through his hair the way he used to do as a teenager when he had to tell me about a bad grade. We sat in my living room, him on the love seat, me in my reading chair. The evening news played quietly on the television. I'd made sweet tea, his favorite, and he kept fidgeting with the glass. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." His voice had that tone, the one that immediately makes a mother's heart clench with worry. "What's wrong? Are you sick? Is Chloe okay?" No, nothing like that." He took a deep breath. "Chloe and I are getting married. We set a date, July 21st. I jumped up from my chair, nearly knocking over my own tea. "Michael! Oh my God, that's wonderful! I'm so happy for you!" I moved to hug him, but something in his posture stopped me. He wasn't smiling the way a man should smile when announcing his engagement. "There's something else, Mom. We want to keep it small, really small, just immediate family, maybe 20 people total. Nothing big or fancy." I sat back down, trying to hide my disappointment. I'd been dreaming about my son's wedding for years, walking down the aisle on his arm, dancing together, giving a toast. But if that's what they wanted, who was I to argue? "Of course, honey. Whatever makes you happy. Have you set a budget? Do you need help with anything?" That's when he dropped the first lie, though I didn't recognize it as one at the time. Actually, Chloe's family insists on covering everything. It's a tradition in their family, something about the bride's parents hosting. Her mom is pretty particular about it. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling down. Rich people have their ways, their traditions. "Okay, well, just let me know if there's anything I can do. I'd love to help with the planning, even if it's just small things." "We've got it handled, Mom. Really. Just mark your calendar for July 21st, and we'll send you all the details closer to the date." Over the next months, I tried to stay involved. I really did. I'd text Michael asking about the plans. "Have you picked a venue yet? Do you need help addressing invitations? What colors are you using?" His responses got shorter and vaguer. "Still figuring it out. Chloe's handling that. Not sure yet." In March, I asked if I could take Chloe to lunch, maybe go dress shopping together, do some mother and daughter-in-law bonding. Michael said Chloe was really busy with work, but maybe later. Later never came. Then came April 7th, a Saturday afternoon. I was at the Kroger on Ponce de Leon Avenue doing my weekly grocery shopping when I literally bumped carts with Patricia Morrison, an older woman who lives 2 houses down from Chloe's parents in Buckhead. We'd met a few times at family gatherings. "Susan, how are you, dear? You must be so excited about the wedding." "I am. July can't come fast enough. 200 guests. Can you imagine?" Jennifer, Chloe's mother, showed me the guest list. She's rented out the entire ballroom at the Piedmont Driving Club. Live jazz band, seated dinner, the works. Must be costing them a fortune. My cart stopped moving. My hands went cold. I'm sorry. What did you say? 200 guests. Oh, yes. Jennifer said they're expecting around 200. Half from Chloe's side, half from Michael's. Though between you and me, I think Chloe's family list is longer. She laughed, not noticing that I'd gone completely still. I managed to smile and make small talk for another minute before excusing myself. I abandoned my half-full cart in the middle of the cereal aisle and walked straight to my car. Sat there in the parking lot, hands shaking, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. 200 guests. Piedmont Driving Club, one of the most exclusive venues in Atlanta. Jazz band, seated dinner. That wasn't a small, intimate ceremony. That was a massive wedding that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. Why would Michael lie to me? I called him that evening, tried to keep my voice calm, casual. Hey, honey, I ran into Patricia Morrison today. She mentioned something about the Piedmont Driving Club. There was a pause, just long enough to confirm my suspicions. Oh, yeah. Chloe's parents really pushed for a bigger venue. You know how her mom gets. But we're still keeping the guest list small. Patricia said 200 people. Another pause. Well, you know how these things go. Her family has a lot of business connections. We kind of had to invite them. My heart was pounding. Michael, why didn't you tell me it had gotten bigger? I would have understood. I didn't want you to stress about it, Mom. It's all under control. We hung up, and I sat there in my dark living room, feeling like I didn't recognize my own son. The second blow came in May. Michael asked to borrow money, $3,500 to be exact. It's for some last-minute wedding expenses, Mom. The band cost more than we budgeted. I'll pay you back right after the honeymoon, I promise. I had $8,000 in my checking account. Money I'd been saving for a new water heater because mine was making concerning noises. But this was my son's wedding. I transferred the money that same day. Don't worry about paying me back right away, I told him. This is my contribution to your big day. 2 weeks later, I was having my car serviced at Richardson Automotive, one of Chloe's father's dealerships. The receptionist, a chatty young woman named Amber, was making small talk while I waited. You're Michael Harper's mom, right? Chloe's future mother-in-law? Yes, that's me. That's so sweet of them to help with Melissa's tuition. Chloe's little sister is going to Wesleyan next fall, super expensive. But I guess when you're getting married, you want to help family out, right? My blood went cold. I'm sorry? Tuition? Oh yeah. Chloe was in here last week, picking up her dad's car. She mentioned Michael had helped them cover the deposit for Melissa's first semester. $3,500, I think? I only remember because that's exactly what I owe in student loans. She laughed. I smiled, nodded, waited for my car, drove home in complete silence because if I started crying, I wouldn't be able to stop. My son had asked me for money, telling me it was for his wedding, and used it to pay for his future sister-in-law's private school tuition. Money I gave him came from my emergency fund, my savings, my retirement. That night, I started a notebook. I wrote down everything, every lie, every evasion, every time he'd chosen Chloe's family over me. The pattern was undeniable. But the worst discovery, the one that finally broke through my denial, came on June 14th. I was downtown running errands, and on a whim, I stopped by Tiffany & Co.'s at Lenox Square. I'd been thinking about getting Michael and Chloe a nice wedding gift, maybe a picture frame or a piece of jewelry. As I walked toward the entrance, I saw them through the window, Michael and Chloe standing at the counter, looking at wedding bands. I was about to go in and surprise them when I heard Chloe's voice drift through the open door. She was talking to the sales associate, a well-dressed man in his 50s. The thing is, my future mother-in-law is a bit, how do I put this delicately, overbearing. She has opinions about everything. That's why we decided to plan the whole wedding without her involvement. Less drama that way. The salesman nodded sympathetically. Family dynamics can be tricky. You have no idea. She's one of those mothers who can't let go, you know? Still treats Michael like he's 12. We figured it was easier to just handle everything ourselves rather than deal with her trying to control every little detail. I waited for Michael to defend me, to say something, anything in my defense. Instead, he just nodded and said, yeah, it's definitely been easier this way. Plus, her taste is kind of dated. No offense to my mom, but she'd probably want us to have the reception at some chain restaurant with a buffet. They both laughed. I stood there on the other side of that glass door, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and crushed my heart with their bare hands. This was how my son saw me. Overbearing, dated, someone to be managed and excluded. I walked back to my car, didn't buy a gift, didn't confront them, just drove home in a fog of pain so thick I barely remember the drive. That night, I called my sister Linda in Savannah, told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said what I'd been too afraid to admit to myself. Susan, they're cutting you out of his life. This isn't about the wedding. This is about Chloe wanting Michael all to herself, and Michael being too weak to stand up for you. But I'm his mother. I know, honey. But some people don't value that the way they should. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I didn't have an answer that night, but over the next few weeks, as I lay awake thinking about everything, something began to shift inside me. The hurt started transforming into something else, something harder and clearer. I decided to do more digging. I called Maria Santos, a woman who'd been working as a housekeeper for Chloe's family for almost 15 years. We'd become friendly at family events, bonding over our shared love of gardening. Maria, I need you to be honest with me. What's really going on with this wedding? There was a long silence on the phone. Then, Mrs. Susan, I wasn't sure if I should say anything. I didn't want to cause trouble. Please, I need to know. The invitations went out 6 weeks ago. 300 people on the final guest list. Mrs. Richardson has been planning this for months. She keeps saying how glad she is that you're not involved in the details because, and I'm just repeating what I heard, you would have wanted something tacky and cheap. My hands started shaking. Did she know they told me it was a small ceremony? I don't know what they told you, Mrs. Susan, but I do know that Miss Chloe laughs about it with her friends when they come over. She says Michael's mother is clingy and that she's doing him a favor by creating boundaries. Creating boundaries. That's what excluding me from my son's wedding was. Boundaries. Maria, thank you for telling me. Mrs. Susan, whatever you're thinking of doing, I think you should do it. You deserve better than this. After I hung up, I sat in my living room for 3 hours, just thinking, remembering, processing, every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd put Michael first, the overtime hours, the sold car, the $30,000 down payment I'd never see again, the $3,500 that went to someone else's education. And for what? To be called overbearing, to be excluded, to be lied to. That's when I started planning. Not revenge exactly, just consequences, a lesson, a moment of clarity for my son about what he was doing and who he was becoming. I went to my closet and pulled out that navy dress I'd bought months ago before I knew I was being cut out. I had it dry cleaned. I made appointments for hair and nails. I bought new shoes, and I prepared that envelope. Tell me something, folks. What would you have done in my position? Would you have stayed home and accepted the disrespect? Or would you have shown up and demanded to be seen? Leave me a comment and let me know. The Monday after my conversation with Maria, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The hurt was still there, deep and aching, but underneath it was something new, a kind of calm determination, a sense that I was finally done accepting crumbs from my own child. I made myself coffee, sat at my kitchen table with my notebook, and started making a plan. Because if I was going to do this, if I was going to show up at that wedding uninvited and confront my son's lies, I needed to do it right, with dignity, with proof, with a message so clear he'd never be able to deny or minimize it. First, I needed to verify everything Maria had told me. I needed to be absolutely certain this wasn't some misunderstanding, that I wasn't overreacting or making assumptions based on hurt feelings. I started with the Piedmont Driving Club. I called pretending to be a potential client interested in booking a wedding. The events coordinator, a woman named Stephanie with a syrupy southern accent, was happy to provide information. For July 21st? Oh yes, we have the Richardson-Harper wedding that day. Beautiful event. They've booked our grand ballroom. Capacity for 300 guests, though I believe their final count is around 275. 275 guests. My son had told me 20. That sounds lovely, I managed to say. What time does the ceremony begin? The ceremony is at St. Michael's Chapel at 3 o'clock, and the reception here starts at 6. Cocktail hour, seated dinner, dancing until midnight. They've hired the Atlanta Jazz Collective for entertainment. Really, it's going to be spectacular. I thanked her and hung up, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Next, I drove to St. Michael's Chapel, a beautiful stone church in Brookhaven that I'd driven past 100 times, but never been inside. I walked in during their office hours and spoke to Mrs. Henderson, the church secretary. "I'm Susan Harper, Michael Harper's mother. I just wanted to confirm some details about the wedding on July 21st. Mrs. Henderson smiled warmly and pulled up the file on her computer. "Oh, yes, 3 o'clock ceremony. We have you listed here as the mother of the groom. Your seat is reserved in the first pew." My throat tightened. They'd made arrangements for me to sit in the mother's seat, probably because they had to for appearances, all while planning to tell me the date had changed, so I wouldn't actually be there. "Perfect," I said. "I just wanted to make sure everything was set." As I left the church, I sat in my car for a long time, looking at that beautiful stone building, imagining my son standing at the altar while I sat at home, believing the wedding had been postponed. The cruelty of it took my breath away. That evening, I called my sister Linda again. I needed someone in my corner, someone who knew the truth and could help me stay strong. "I'm going," I told her. "I'm showing up at that wedding whether they want me there or not." "Good," Linda said firmly. "It's about time you stopped letting that boy walk all over you. What do you need from me? Just tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me I'm not being vindictive or petty. Susan, listen to me. You raised that boy alone after Richard died. You gave him everything. You went without so he could have. And now he's lying to you, excluding you, using your money to impress his fiancé's family while treating you like you're an embarrassment. You're not being vindictive. You're standing up for yourself. There's a difference." Her words gave me strength. Over the next few weeks, I prepared methodically. I went through my financial records and documented everything I'd given Michael over the years. The $30,000 down payment in 2021. The $3,500 in May of this year that went to Chloe's sister's tuition. Smaller amounts here and there. $1,000 for furniture, $800 for car repairs, $500 for a security deposit when he first moved out. The total came to $47,300. $47,300 I'd given to my son, taken from my retirement savings, my emergency fund, my future security. Money I'd never asked to be paid back because that's what mothers do. We give without keeping score. Except now, looking at that number written in my notebook, I realized I should have kept score. I should have demanded respect in exchange for my sacrifices. I started drafting the letter that would go in the envelope. I must have rewritten it 20 times. The first versions were angry, full of hurt and accusations. But as the days passed, my approach changed. I didn't want to rage at him. I wanted him to understand, to really see what he'd done. The final version was 2 pages, handwritten on my best stationery. I'll tell you what it said in a bit, but first, let me tell you about the phone call. On Wednesday, July 17th, 4 days before the wedding, my phone rang at 7:30 in the evening. Michael's name flashed on the screen. My heart started pounding, but I answered calmly. "Hey, Mom." "Hi, honey. How are you?" "Good, good. Listen, I need to tell you something about the wedding." Here it comes, I thought. The lie. The betrayal. I gripped the phone tighter. "Chloe and we've been talking, and we decided to move the date. We're going to do something really small and intimate, just immediate family. Like her parents, her sister, you, and maybe 2 or 3 other people. We want it to be really special and personal, you know?" His voice sounded so sincere, so convincing. If I didn't know the truth, I would have believed him completely. "Oh," I said, injecting just the right amount of disappointment into my voice. "When are you thinking?" "We're still figuring it out. Probably sometime in August or September. I know you had July 21st marked, and I'm really sorry, Mom. It's just that Chloe's grandmother isn't doing well, and we want to make sure we can do this properly when things settle down with her family." The lies flowed so easily from his mouth, not a single hesitation, not a hint of guilt in his voice. This wasn't a last-minute decision made under pressure. This was planned, rehearsed, delivered with perfect believability. "I understand," I said softly. "Family comes first. Just let me know the new date when you have it." "Thanks, Mom. You're the best. I love you." "I love you too, Michael." After I hung up, I sat very still for a long time. Part of me had been holding on to hope that maybe there was some explanation, some reason that would make all of this make sense. But that phone call erased any remaining doubt. My son had looked me in the eye, metaphorically speaking, and lied to me without a second thought. And he'd done it to spare himself the inconvenience of having his mother at his wedding. The next day, Thursday, I finalized everything. I called my hairdresser and moved my appointment to Saturday morning. I picked up my dress from the dry cleaners. I bought a new pair of navy heels from Macy's. Nothing too fancy, just elegant and appropriate. On Friday, I met Linda for lunch at a cafe in Virginia Highland, ironically just 3 blocks from Michael and Chloe's apartment. We sat outside in the summer heat, drinking iced tea and talking strategy. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Linda asked. "Once you walk through those church doors, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "What are you hoping happens? That he'll apologize? That Chloe will feel ashamed?" I thought about that for a long moment, watching people walk by on the sidewalk, young couples holding hands, families with strollers, people living their lives, unaware of the small war being waged inside my heart. "I'm hoping," I said slowly, "that my son will understand that his actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like they're disposable, especially people who love you. I'm hoping he'll realize that his mother deserves better than lies and exclusion, and if he doesn't realize it right away, well, at least I'll know I stood up for myself, that I didn't just accept being treated like garbage." Linda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're braver than you think." "I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. Brave people usually are." That evening, I finished the letter. Here's what I wrote. "Dear Michael, for 30 years, I have loved you with every fiber of my being. From the moment they placed you in my arms, you became my entire world. I stayed up nights when you were sick. I worked double shifts to pay for your education. I gave you the down payment on your apartment, even though it meant draining my savings. When your father died, I promised myself I would give you every opportunity, every advantage, every chance to build a good life. I kept that promise. Even when it hurt, even when it meant sacrifice, I kept it. Today, I discovered that you've been lying to me about your wedding. You told me the date changed, that it would be a small ceremony later. But I know the truth. July 21st at 3 o'clock at St. Michael's Chapel. Reception at Piedmont Driving Club. 275 guests. You planned an elaborate celebration and deliberately excluded me from it. You asked me for $3,500 for wedding expenses and used it to pay for Chloe's sister's tuition. You let me believe I was contributing to your future when actually you were simply using me. I overheard Chloe calling me overbearing and you agreeing that I'm dated and clingy. I learned that her mother considers me tacky and cheap, and instead of defending me, instead of standing up for the woman who gave you everything, you went along with it. You chose their approval over my dignity. This envelope contains documentation of every dollar I've given you over the past 10 years, $47,300. I'm not asking for it back. Money is just money. But respect, Michael. Dignity. Those things aren't negotiable. From today forward, you no longer need to worry about your overbearing, clingy, dated mother interfering in your life. You wanted boundaries? You have them. When you're ready to treat me with the respect I deserve, when you're ready to value our relationship more than Chloe's family's opinion, you know where to find me. The $3,500 from May? Consider it my wedding gift. Just don't expect anything else from me until you can look me in the eye and acknowledge what you've done. I hope your marriage brings you happiness. I truly do. But I hope even more that someday you'll understand what you've lost. With love always, despite everything, Mom. I printed out copies of all the bank transfers, highlighted the amounts, and paper-clipped them to the letter. Then I sealed everything in a crisp, white envelope. Saturday morning, I got up at 6, showered, moisturized, put on my makeup with extra care. At 9, I went to the salon where Tracy, my hairdresser for the past 12 years, worked magic on my gray hair, styling it in soft curls that made me look, I had to admit, pretty good for 65. "Big event today?" Tracy asked as she worked. "My son's wedding. How exciting. You must be thrilled." I smiled at her in the mirror. "It's going to be memorable, that's for sure." After the salon, I went home and got dressed. The navy dress fit perfectly. Elegant, but not attention-seeking. Pearl earrings, subtle gold watch. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror and saw a woman who'd been beaten down, but wasn't staying down. A woman who'd found her strength. At 2:15, I got in my car and drove toward Brookhaven. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My heart was racing. Part of me wanted to turn around, go home, let them have their day. It would be easier, less confrontational. But I'd spent 30 years taking the easy road, avoiding confrontation, accepting less than I deserved. Not today. Today I was done being invisible. I parked in front of St. Michael's Chapel at exactly 2:35, 25 minutes before the ceremony. Michael's car wasn't there yet. I took the envelope from my purse, checked my makeup one last time in the rearview mirror, and walked into that church with my head held high. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you love? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Tell me in the comments, because I want to know I'm not alone in this. And if this story is resonating with you, make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next is going to shock you. The inside of St. Michael's Chapel was cool and hushed, smelling of furniture polish and the lilies arranged at the altar. Afternoon sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across the wooden pews. It was beautiful, the kind of church where you'd want your child to get married. Mrs. Henderson, the secretary I'd spoken to weeks before, was near the entrance organizing programs. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Mrs. Harper, you're here early. The family usually arrives closer to ceremony time." "I wanted to make sure I got a good seat," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking against the stone floor, and sat down in the first pew on the right side, the groom's side, the seat where the mother of the groom sits. My seat. I placed my purse beside me and held the envelope in my lap, and then I waited. Over the next 20 minutes, other guests started arriving. Chloe's family members who I recognized from previous gatherings. They greeted me warmly, clearly unaware of any drama. Her mother, Jennifer Richardson, even stopped to hug me. "Susan, don't you look lovely? I'm so glad you could make it." I wanted to say, "Make it? I'm his mother. Where else would I be?" But I just smiled and said, "Thank you, Jennifer. It's a beautiful day for a wedding." At 2:53, I heard a commotion near the entrance. Raised voices, though I couldn't make out words. Then Michael appeared in the doorway of the chapel, his best man Devin beside him. Michael's face when he saw me. Folks, I will remember that expression for the rest of my life. All the color drained from his skin. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish gasping for air. He grabbed Devin's arm so hard, I saw Devin wince. He started walking toward me, his steps quick and jerky. Got about halfway down the aisle when he seemed to realize people were watching. He smoothed his expression, tried to look normal, but I could see the panic in his eyes. "Mom," he said quietly when he reached my pew. "What are you doing here?" I looked up at him, this man I'd raised, and felt such a mixture of emotions I could barely breathe. Love, yes, still love, always love, but also disappointment so deep it ached. "I'm attending my son's wedding," I said calmly. "Where else would I be?" "But I told you we changed the date." "You lied to me, Michael. You told me the wedding was postponed, but here we are. 3 o'clock at St. Michael's Chapel, just like it's been planned for months." His face flushed red. People in nearby pews were starting to stare. "Mom, can we talk about this later, please?" "Of course, honey, after the ceremony. I'll be right here in my seat." I patted the pew. "You go ahead and get ready. Your bride is probably arriving soon." He stood there frozen for another moment, then turned and practically ran toward the room where the groomsmen were gathering. I could see him through the doorway, talking urgently to Devin, his hands gesturing wildly. At 2:58, Chloe arrived. I heard the bridal party entering through a side door, heard the excited whispers and last-minute preparations. The organist began playing. The ceremony started at 3:03, 3 minutes late, because, I later learned, someone had to convince Michael to come out of the preparation room. When he walked down the aisle to take his place at the altar, his eyes found mine immediately. He looked like he might be sick. His best man literally had to steady him with a hand on his shoulder. Then Chloe appeared at the back of the church on her father's arm, and she was breathtaking. Her dress was gorgeous, her smile radiant. She had no idea why the groom looked like he was facing a firing squad instead of his bride. The ceremony itself was painful to watch. When Father Mitchell asked Michael if he took Chloe to be his wife, there was a long, horrible pause. Chloe's smile faltered. People shifted in their seats. Michael's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I do." Father Mitchell, bless him, just smiled and continued. But everyone had noticed. The photographer's camera clicked frantically, capturing Michael's pale face, his trembling hands. When they were finally pronounced husband and wife and kissed, the applause was enthusiastic, but I could hear the underlying confusion. Why had the groom seemed so uncomfortable? As they walked back down the aisle together, Michael's eyes locked on mine. I gave him a small smile, a sad smile, and I held up the envelope just enough for him to see. His step actually faltered. Chloe looked at him, confused, but kept smiling and waving at guests. At the church entrance, there was the usual receiving line. Guests congratulated the couple, hugged them, took photos. I waited until the crowd thinned a little, then approached. Chloe saw me first. "Susan, you made it!" I thought. She stopped, glancing at Michael with confusion. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I said warmly. I hugged her, genuinely hoping, despite everything, that she'd be good to my son. Then I turned to Michael. "Congratulations, sweetheart." I held out the envelope. "This is for you, your wedding gift." He took it like it might explode in his hands. "Mom, open it later," I said quietly. "When you have a moment alone, really read it. Think about it." Jennifer Richardson appeared beside us. "Susan, you'll be at the reception, won't you? Cocktail hour starts at 6 at the club." I smiled at her. "I'm afraid I can't make it, Jennifer, but thank you for inviting me. I hope you all have a wonderful evening." I turned to leave, and that's when Michael grabbed my arm. "Mom, wait, please. Can we talk?" I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. "You had months to talk to me, Michael. Months to include me, to be honest with me, to treat me with basic respect. You chose not to. So no, we can't talk. Not now. Not until you've read what's in that envelope and really thought about what you've done." I gently removed his hand from my arm, kissed his cheek, and walked out of that church. I made it to my car before the tears started, sat there in the parking lot, hands shaking, crying so hard I could barely catch my breath. But underneath the pain was something else, something that felt almost like relief. I'd done it. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to be erased from my son's life without a fight. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Michael, no texts, nothing. I filled my days with work, with my garden, with dinners with Linda. But every time my phone rang, my heart jumped, hoping it was him. It never was. In August, about 3 weeks after the wedding, I ran into Maria Santos at the farmer's market downtown. She pulled me aside, away from the fruit stands. "Mrs. Susan, I thought you should know. Things are not good with them. I hear them fighting when I'm at the Richardson house. Michael came over last week looking awful, like he hasn't been sleeping." "What are they fighting about?" "Money, mostly. Miss Chloe, she spends like crazy. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, a new car she just had to have. And apparently, there's debt Michael didn't know about. Credit cards she maxed out before the wedding." He found the statements. I felt a complicated twist of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also sadness. I hadn't wanted to be right about Chloe. I'd wanted her to be good for him. "Is he okay?" "Honestly, I don't think so. He seems lost. Mrs. Richardson says he keeps asking about you, wondering if you'll ever forgive him." My throat tightened. "If he wants to talk to me, he knows where I live." September and October passed. I heard through the grapevine that Michael and Chloe's fights were escalating, that she'd moved back in with her parents for a while, that Michael was sleeping at the office some nights rather than going home to their apartment. I wanted to reach out. Every single day, I wanted to call him, to ask if he was okay, to tell him he could come home to me. But I didn't, because I knew that if our relationship was going to heal, he had to be the one to take the first step. He had to choose to value me. On November 9th, a Saturday evening, my doorbell rang at 8 o'clock. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there was Michael. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled like he'd slept in them. But what broke my heart were his eyes. They were red, like he'd been crying. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked on the word. "Mom, please. Can we talk?" I stood there looking at my son, this man I'd raised, seeing him truly vulnerable for the first time in years. Part of me wanted to slam the door, to make him hurt the way he'd hurt me. But the bigger part, the part that was still his mother, stepped aside and let him in. We sat in my living room, the same room where he'd told me about the wedding plans so many months ago. I didn't offer him tea or try to make small talk. I just waited. I read your letter, he said finally. The night of the wedding. I read it, and I couldn't believe what I'd done, what I'd become. And I'm sorry. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to explain it. Chloe, she made me feel like you were too much, you know? Too involved, too emotional, I don't know. And her family, they're so different from us. They're polished and proper, and they have money and connections, and I wanted to fit in with them. I wanted to be the kind of son-in-law they'd be proud of. So you sacrificed your relationship with me to impress them. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I'm such an idiot. And the worst part is, you were right about everything. About Chloe, about her family, about all of it. Over the next hour, he told me everything. About the debt Chloe had hidden from him. $38,000 in credit card bills she'd racked up buying designer clothes and funding her lifestyle. About how her family knew but hadn't told him, thinking he'd help her become more responsible. About the fights, the manipulation, the way she'd turn everything around to make him feel like he was the problem. She told me 3 days ago that she wants a divorce, he said. She said I'm not ambitious enough, not successful enough, that I embarrass her in front of her friends. She's moving back in with her parents, and her father already has a lawyer working on the divorce papers. I'm sorry, Michael. Are you? He looked at me with those red-rimmed eyes. Because I deserve this. I deserve all of it. I treated you terribly, and you were the only person who ever really loved me. We sat in silence for a long time. The old me would have rushed to comfort him, to tell him it was okay, that everything would be fine, but I wasn't that person anymore. You're right, I said finally. You did treat me terribly. You lied to me, excluded me, used me for money while disrespecting me behind my back. You chose people who barely knew you over the mother who gave you everything. He flinched like I'd hit him. But, I continued, you're also my son, and I love you. I always have, and I always will. That doesn't mean I'm going to let you treat me that way again. It doesn't mean I'm going to pretend what you did was okay. But it does mean that if you're willing to really work on our relationship, if you're willing to respect me and value me, then we can move forward. I'll do anything, Mom. Anything. I can't lose you too. That was the beginning of our rebuilding. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick. Michael started seeing a therapist to work through his issues with boundaries and people-pleasing. We had hard conversations about expectations, about respect, about what a healthy mother-son relationship looks like. The divorce went through in March of 2025. Chloe walked away with half of everything, including half the value of the apartment I'd helped buy. Michael had to sell it and move into a small studio apartment in East Atlanta. He was devastated financially and emotionally. But you know what? He never asked me for money. Not once. Instead, he asked for my advice, my time, my perspective. He started coming over for Sunday dinner again, and this time he actually showed up. He'd help me with grocery shopping, fix things around my condo, just spend time together without his phone constantly distracting him. One Sunday in May, we were sitting on my balcony after dinner, watching the sunset over the Atlanta skyline, and he said something that made all the pain worth it. Mom, I know I can never really make up for what I did, for lying to you, for excluding you from the wedding, for treating you like you didn't matter, but I want you to know that losing Chloe was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me realize what I'd already lost, or almost lost. What's that? You, my mom, the one person who's been there through everything, who sacrificed for me, who loved me even when I didn't deserve it. I took you for granted, and I'm never doing that again. Now, it's been a 1.5 years since that wedding day. Michael is doing better. He's still in his studio apartment, still rebuilding financially, still working through the emotional aftermath of his marriage. But he's different, stronger, more aware of his own worth and other people's worth. Last month, he started dating someone new. Her name is Amy. She's a teacher at a public elementary school, and the first thing he did was bring her to meet me. We had dinner at my place, just the 3 of us, and Amy was lovely, down-to-earth kind, genuinely interested in getting to know me. After she left, Michael stayed to help me clean up. As we washed dishes together, he said, "What do you think of her?" "I think she seems wonderful. But more importantly, what do you think of her?" "I think I really like her. And I think I want to do it right this time. Build something real, something honest. No lies, no games, no choosing someone else's approval over the people who matter." That sounds like a good plan. He dried the last dish and turned to face me. "Mom, I want you to know something. If Amy and I get serious, if we ever get engaged, you're going to be involved in every part of it. Every decision, every plan, every detail. Because you're my mom, and that means something. It should have always meant something." I hugged him then. This man who'd hurt me so deeply, but who'd also found his way back. And I forgave him. Not because what he did was okay, but because sometimes love means giving people a chance to be better. Here's what I learned through all of this, folks. Being a good mother doesn't mean accepting disrespect. It doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity for the sake of keeping the peace. It doesn't mean staying silent when you're being mistreated, even by the child you love more than anything. A good mother teaches her children about consequences, about respect, about how to treat people with dignity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is draw a line and refuse to cross it, even when it breaks your heart. Michael needed to learn that his actions had consequences, that you can't lie to people, use them, exclude them, and expect them to just accept it. He needed to understand that love without respect isn't really love at all. Did I handle everything perfectly? No. There are things I would do differently if I could go back. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret showing up at that church. I don't regret handing him that envelope and making him face what he'd done. Because if I hadn't, if I'd just accepted his lies and stayed home that day, our relationship would have continued down that path. I would have become smaller and smaller in his life, less and less important, until I was just the woman who sent birthday cards and got short, obligatory phone calls on holidays. Instead, we have a real relationship now, built on honesty, respect, and genuine care for each other. It's not the relationship we had when he was young, and it's not the relationship I thought we'd have when he got married. But it's real, and it's good. So if you're going through something similar, if someone you love is treating you with disrespect or taking you for granted, I want you to hear this. You deserve better. You deserve to be valued, respected, included. And sometimes, standing up for yourself is the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for them. Now, before I go, I want to ask you to do something. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think about your own relationships, or gave you courage to stand up for yourself, leave me a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you felt. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about finding strength and standing up for what you deserve. And now, I want you to watch the story that's appearing on your screen right now. It's about another woman who refused to accept disrespect, and I think you're going to find it just as powerful as this one. Remember, a mother's love is infinite, but even infinite love requires respect. Don't ever forget your worth. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you're too much or not enough. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve a place at your table. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you're stronger than you think.